Thanks so much. Yeah, sorry, Carrie Hillier couldn't talk, but I'm going to talk on her behalf and hopefully be somewhat competent. She's really the expert in this, and she's been leading the way from the local government perspective on an RPA service. And so at the end of this, if you wanted to chat to her, she's down the back there and more than willing to chat, subject to her voice being available. About LGIS. So Local Government Infrastructure Services is a infrastructure services company that was developed about 10 years ago. And we're wholly owned by the Local Government Association of Queensland. And our business essentially is supporting local government to deliver infrastructure, and a lot of it is in innovation. So some of the work that we do, so during the disasters, we delivered about $1 billion worth of infrastructure to try and get communities back on track. Because as you can understand, $1 billion worth of infrastructure going through a community at a point in time, in a single point of time, is pretty intense for a council to handle. So we were there to help them out. We're now currently addressing areas of market failure, and one of the significant areas of market failure we consider is energy. Councils are spending a lot of money on energy. They run pumping stations, as you can imagine, and they've got street lights. There's a lot of infrastructure that is energy hungry, and you only have to look at your own power bill to see the amount of increases that we've seen over the past 10 years. And so we're delivering embedded solutions as well. So we're out there doing strategy for councils, but we're also building solutions. So we're going to start and build geothermal plants out in Western Queensland, solar farms for councils out in both in urban areas, but also out in remote communities as well. And then the last area that we work in is de-risking innovation. So as you can imagine, there are 77 councils across Queensland, and if they're all investing in innovation independently, potentially there's a lot of risk that can be absorbed by a single model. And that's where we get into drones, and that's where we get into street lighting as well. And so we're looking at street lighting, smart street lighting solutions, among lots of other things. Okay, it has nothing to do. So the gateway service essentially is really, it's a management tool, it's an operational tool to assist councils getting into RPAS services quite easily. So it's about shifting them to a place where they feel confident that they can actually go and use an RPAS to deliver services for their operations quite quickly and effectively, low risk. They don't want to worry too much about the detail of the provider. They want to make sure that they're a low-risk provider, they're cost-effective, and they're going to deliver. And that's the really most important part that we're looking at. And it's all about collating data for us, and I'll get to that in a bit later. So there's this central coordination and conversion unit, and so what we do is basically we understand the business needs, so we're going out there and talking to councils and identifying the need that they have, and then I guess assessing the independent processes that are needed to actually take that data that you capture and put it into an operational context. There's a lot of data being captured, but actually pushing that through into the operations is probably the most important part of all of this. It's not actually just going out there and capturing the data, putting it in an Explorer file and sitting it on a desktop somewhere. It's actually getting it to work in your business. And exploring then, obviously, the range of solution options. There's a lot of overstating in the market about what can happen. We're really interested in what is happening right now and what councils can do to change their business and transform their business operations right now. And then procuring the best fit solution. So we're actively out in the marketplace, talking to the market and getting the best fit solutions. And obviously that's quite a difficult space to be in because the market is shifting so quickly. Technology is shifting so quickly. Standards are moving. And as we heard about the CASET changes, those things are going to impact the deliverables that the market provides. And then the planning and implementation. So if we're going to get a solution out there in the marketplace, there's going to be a bit of change management in local government. There's an array of data that's probably expanded from the data position that they had previously. how do we take that and change the operational focus to bring that data to light? Okay. So here's just a couple of images. It's just really to illustrate some of the things that we've been looking at. So over on the left-hand side there, you see a spillway. That's actually a Melbourne water spillway. And the reason that I bring that to light is it's really a great illustration of where the RPA unit itself can actually do a great job in collecting the data, but also if you've got a data capability behind you, that in combination creates a great outcome. So this spillway, essentially, Melbourne Water used to have 4 guys that were trained over a couple of days, and they would abseil with GPS-linked cameras and go scale down the spillway. And that would take several days for them to do that effectively, and they would do it quite regularly, but there was a lot of safety issues, there's a lot of training issues, there's a lot of things that are built up and wrapped up into delivering that asset management service. And I guess that a drone has actually revolutionised the way that they capture that data now. So drone, it's essentially a couple of hours of flight, even less really, when you talk about the safety assessment and all of the things that go in with it. It's a couple of hours worth of operations to capture the data. But the next part of it is that they had a defect detection capability in this as well. So council now is not only just getting GPS images where they have to go back to the computer and actually go through and identify a defect, the automatic defect detection puts that in an exceptional file, and they're actually able to explore the data really, really quickly and make decisions really, really quickly. So it's a great efficiency tool. And if you think of it, local government, if you thought of it as a national company, it's the largest asset holder in Australia. So it's bigger than Telstra, it's bigger than any company in Australia. It's a massive business, asset intensive. If we can make it more efficient by a couple of %, it makes a big difference. And that's what LGIS is really interested in. So we did some research about 6 months ago, and it's basically an investigation into how do local governments get to access and how do they use RPA in their day-to-day operations. And if you actually go to www.lgis.com.au, the report's on that website. But essentially what we identified was that on one side we've got, from a council's perspective, we've got a lot of market confusion. Do they buy a unit or do they outsource a unit? And if they do, what type of unit? Obviously, there's massive change in the market delivery of the devices. So, in 1 year, you're going to invest $100,000 in a solution potentially, and then next year have a solution that's $20,000 and does much more in capability. Understanding the need confusion. So councils, obviously, it's a really it's a wide-ranging asset business. There's lots of different things that are happening from a pest management perspective. There's all of these different pieces of activity that are occurring across council. How do you identify the actual needs and then marry that up with the solutions that are available right now today? So not things that are available in the future in 5 years' time, but things that we can actually get working right now. Look, internal scepticism, distrust. We had a number of, and this was a national look, so we looked at a number of councils across Australia. There were a number of providers out there overstating their capability. And so that one operator would come in and say, yep, absolutely, we can do this. They deliver the piece of work, it's subpar. There are a number of issues with the data because the data is the most important part in all of this for council. And that experience has actually imprinted an idea that RPA doesn't work. And so you get this initial idea that actually, well, it's not a useful tool. And that's completely incorrect. It just means that provider has overstated. Now, if they maybe had a different provider, potentially it would have been a different outcome. Or maybe actually it was a smarter opportunity for the provider to say, actually, it doesn't do that, but let's explore some of the things that we can do. So you've got those things on one side, and then obviously there's a number of things that we've identified that are 5 key elements for RPA use. It's a lot for council, again, to look at if you're looking at an external provider, to actually get in and really delve deep into trying to find an appropriate provider that meets those things. Data infrastructure is the biggest thing that's probably missing from the equation. There's a lot of talk about the units themselves, and it's absolutely important and fantastic. The data outcome is the most important for us in local government. It's the most important for, if you're looking at pest management, compliance management, asset management in particular, there's so many things that local government are involved in. It's really about data. And in some instances also, you look at disaster management, it's going to be about data, but it's also going to be about delivery of services. So full research report on the website there. So how do we help? So essentially, we're providing access to a low-risk, low-cost service for council. So there's for want of a better phrase, it's the Uber for drones. Terrible, terrible analogy, but it is really essentially a one-stop shop where councils can phone up and say, this is the type of data outcome that I'm wanting, and this is when I want it. So there's a time factor there, and then for us to actually go and get the right provider and pull that in for council. And it gives council the opportunity to have a conversation about capability. So if they're thinking that RPA might be able to be used in a certain context, then a conversation with us helps them to identify whether it's actually a mature part of the market right now and we can do it. Or do we just experiment? Do we work together to actually experiment and find a way? So we have a supply panel. So we've gone out to the market recently. Some of the providers might know we've gone to the market on geospatial data capture, focusing on volumetric and other geospatial activities. And from that, we've actually brought together a panel of providers, and that assists us to go out and provide those services to council. It's obviously a moving space, and we need to be fresh constantly. So we're constantly talking to the marketplace as well to see what new things are occurring. And soon we'll actually release our asset management tender, which is the same thing. We're going out to the market, we're actually setting some standards, particularly around the data outcomes. Obviously, we want to talk about insurances, we want to talk about piloting and operational capability, but setting a standard for data is really important for us as well. So that's released next week. And so Carrie's put a point here, we're here for a good time, not a long time. Essentially, the most important thing for us is to be fluid in the marketplace. So we're here to provide a bit of a maturing service for local government, and if over time local government get the capability and the market is responding quite well to the provision of services, we'll move into a different space. This data collation space, whether it's in smart infrastructure or in drones, is exploding, and it's only going to continue. So that's why we're being quite fluid. It's really about data. So as part of that, we're actually working through a number of questions, and really some of the harder questions about how we make this more efficient. So this is, and I probably should have used this to explain the service, which is, sorry about that, Carrie. So essentially, it's a one contract, and there's multiple services that councils can engage under it. So as I said, it's an evolving range of data solutions. If RPA at some point in time doesn't actually create the data capture outcome, there's more additional tools, well then that's where the market is going, and obviously we'll be flexible with that. The great thing about it is we've got supply redundancy. So if a council actually wants a service, it doesn't actually matter which provider provides it, as long as the service is done. So we've got a number of redundancy measures in place to actually provide that. And regional bulk buildings. We did a job, actually, a volumetric job out here recently, and we passed by 4 councils to get it, to provide. It was a volumetric survey, I think, at a quarry. And the smarter move for us all, and local government in particular, is to bandy together and actually make sure that that provider can do 4 or 5 jobs along the way and mature the market and give them a healthy understanding of what local government is all about and the types of data requirements that we have. So there's a number of components that we assure for councils. It's about insurance and licensing, quality assurance, contract management. We take care of all of that. Councils just have to send us an email, pick up the phone, and we'll deliver the service for them. And some of the bigger questions that we are working on right now. Where does RPA fit within within council management of, say, things like disaster management, things with regards to pest management, coastal adaptation management, and asset management planning? We've done a lot in asset management and continue to do a lot in asset management. I think that's where, I know it's quite boring in some ways, but that's actually where the really interesting space is. When our CEO joined LGIS a couple of years ago, he came with a story about a culvert that failed in New South Wales. And a family was driving over that culvert, and unfortunately it failed at the time that they were driving over, and a couple of people were killed in the car. And it's a horrible story, but when you get down to actually the reasons why that happened, they were all very human things. It was about ego, it was about self-deception. There was all of these things that led up to that failing in the asset. If we are data-driven and we use tools like this to actually capture the data and make decisions, that's going to revolutionise the way that we manage our assets. What jobs are best suited? When is RPA not the best solution? I mentioned before about if there's a greater tool, and RPA isn't the item that we're going to use, we'll move to that. And it's important for the industry as well, so that you're not over-investing in a technology that's shifting in a different direction. So it's about us having a conversation with the market as well as local government to see where that's headed. And obviously there's a lot of talk about regulations and policy, so conversations with both CASA and insurance industries, and I haven't got the chicken, so that's positive. So we are looking particularly around disaster at the moment. Our view is that looking at disaster and beyond visual line of sight is actually a really good place to actually explore the regulatory environment and see where we can look at beyond visual line of sight. The reason being is that during the disaster, the community demand and the safety demand pool is so high. And so if we can create a space where we're looking at that in a really prudent way, we might be able to actually start and shift some ideas and thinking around beyond visual line of sight. So we're starting some trials, and we're partnering with Telstra. I think we can say that. Or maybe we can't. Yeah, okay, we can. We're partnering with Telstra. Paul Merrick's not here anymore, is he? So I can say that we're partnering with Telstra. And we are using their LTE network that Merrick mentioned before. Right. That's the end. Okay. Yeah? Yeah. All right. Thanks.